Welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing live show number 428. I am your host, Lauren Gray. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday. And the last one, no, we got one more week of one more show this month. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm happy for Halloween. Halloween is like a great start of time of year. It's one of my favorite holidays, if not my favorite holiday. And I don't know whether that's in a combination of just the enjoyment of the holiday or the fact that during all of my time in hospitality, it was a transition business-wise that people were happier. People were more engaging. The staff was a little more involved with the idea of it being the time of year and so forth. And this goes to the fact that I was primarily in Florida hotels. So it's not like we had the detriments of the winter season with this piling snow and all of the things like that. We had the transition of it just being cooler from the heat of the summer and so forth. And even though there's not much of a seasonal change down here in Florida, just the change in the subtlest of ways was also appreciated. But it is very unique in the sense of how the year shifts, because for pretty much everybody, and I think domestically in the United States, when I say this, it's a time of year where the combination of guest engagement, your team, the anticipation of the new year, the time that you get to spend with family and friends, the actual holiday feeling itself it becomes palatable. And from a marketer's perspective, it was an easier time of year to do your work because you knew that most of what you were doing was related very much about the holiday season. The holiday event cycle was a very dominant aspect of what you did for marketing. Not that there weren't so many other things, not that there wasn't groups still finishing their conference agendas and finishing their fiscal budgets and so forth. And, it's not like you didn't have all the other sources of business. So that brings us up to my conversation for today, our topic today. And it's a very short title, but then I thought, only because I keep adding pieces to it. The topic for today is how well do you do CRM, customer relationship management? How well do you engage with your guests? And what's the value proposition, especially in today's circumstances of technology, privacy, the changing technologies associated with interactions, engagements, authenticity? There's a lot of moving pieces, more so now than it has historically been, except for one juxtaposition. And this is from firsthand experiencing, because I'm old enough to say this, is when the transition in about 2005, 2006, where the internet supplanted a lot of the more traditional marketing that had been done up to that point for decades. That was a huge upheaval when people began to rely more on email communication than snail mail communication, when more online advertisement had impact than the traditional magazines, newspapers, local engagements, banners on sporting events and so forth. When that transition happened, where the percentage of contribution of what internet did back then to what it is now more similar to today, that transition point was very challenging for the industry in lots of ways. We had lots of people that were in positions of authority that basically took the stance of, hey, I run a hotel, I'm not some internet dude. Those people didn't last long because they had to be both. It's not that they had to diminish their role as the supervisor or the mitigator of the property, but they also had to include the new skill sets associated with the new mediums of communication. I would equate that to today in very strong similarities. And we're going to go through a little bit of why I say that there's a similar upheaval going on right now, especially when it comes to what we're talking about, customer relationship management, our guest interactions, and the value of what that means to us and how are we actually doing it. Coffee is great. So let's dive into some of these things. CRM, customer relationship management. I often feel it's a looked over value proposition. We're so fixated, and so many people are fixated about acquisition of business. I call it the Disney mentality, meaning that, if not you, then the person behind you in line. If you don't like what we're offering or the price that we're asking for it, step out of line because there's somebody behind you that will. And it was very much about finding and acquiring new guests. A lot of our marketing technology, our marketing strategy was about the acquisition of more guests. When I say by that, it's like, we've been talking a lot about lookalike audiences these past few weeks and custom audiences. And it was about saying, if this is my profile or my engagement of a current guest, and I can put it into a system that will tell me very similar people like them, but they have never been exposed to me or ever actually stayed in my hotel or not, I can talk to them as well. Then please do. Well, that's all about new acquisitions of guests. That's about finding more people beyond the people that have already found us. That's incredibly valuable. I am not diminishing the impact and the value of that. Not saying to abandon it, not saying to dilute it. I'm saying you have to add to it. You have to keep that skill, but you have to add another skill, which often gets missed. And that is, what do you do with the people that you already engage with? How well do you engage with them? Now, you hear me talk about Flip2 a lot as a great platform for both pre engagement, but what real value is post engagement as well. The ability to have the continuance of conversation. I'm not touting Flip2, although I'm an advocate of it. But that perspective of value of the customer relationship is critical in your marketing strategies. It has been all along, but even more so now. And like I said, we'll talk more. The idea that we have now more tools than ever to engage guests. We also have more reasons than ever to engage guests. We'll tackle both of those points. First, let's talk about the tools. Technology has vastly improved in our ability to communicate with guests. People have become normalized into the channels of communication that we operate in. We have social channels, we have online channels, we have communications that's very electronic. So much so that we have generationally a younger audience that does not like to actually use things like phone for phone communications. The phone has become an interface of more than just the audio communication that it was inspired from. They're very much about consuming their information when they wish to. It's not like we used to have to wait for the 6 o'clock news to find out what happened that day. And if you missed the 6 o'clock news, you had no chance to see news until the next day, kind of thing. Yes, I'm dating myself. You can information's on demand to the point that we actually get to legitimately say that we are overwhelmed by the amount of information, that there's so many variations and flavors and nuances to the information that we get that we have to sift through it to understand it the way we wish to understand it, which also creates our problems we talk about in society, where we create an echo bubble around ourselves. Our technology has said, oh, if you like this, we're going to keep feeding you what you like, which is only echoing what your interests are. So hence you create this echo bubble that you feel affirmed that what you think, what you look at, what you find important is shared by the information that's being given to you. So you feel like you're not alone. But unfortunately, you also feel like you're in the majority when maybe that's not the case. So that there's a good bad to all of these things that go on, but technology as a prevalence of tools right now is incredibly powerful and large. One of the biggest aspects of tools that we now have at our disposal is the functional use of AI. The ability to emulate and augment what human interaction has provided all these decades, centuries, whatever, mainly decades for marketing, is profound. There is negatives to it. We've talked at great lengths about bots before they became AI bots. Bots that were just workflows, algorithms that, conditional statements. If they click this, then this is the path of discussion that goes forward. If they click this, this is the path of discussion goes forward. But taking Isaac Asimov's rule of three, we made our own three rules. Don't act like you're a human. Don't replace a human. And don't get in the way of talking to a human. Those three things, if applied to your bot sequences, makes it so that it's a tool that is actually functionally useful rather than a halfway replacement to a full human interaction. Anybody that's talked to, however, customer service platforms that even do use humans, you probably take the AI sometimes because the scripts are so contained that they can't really help you. They just have to read what's in front of them. It's almost as useless as an AI bot that you can't get out of their subject line from. So again, good and bad. But the idea that AI now can augment a lot of the things that, two important things. One, bandwidth and availability of resources to do that. At Your Service for Marriott, built a program years ago that would have somebody sitting in the back of the house addressing immediate customer engagement concerns, both internal and external. It was seen as groundbreaking, and I truly give them credit for the innovation of doing it. Hilton tried it and was unsuccessful a couple of years before because they didn't scale to it and they didn't work all the way through with it, which Hilton has a history of that, I guess. So that was a great feature until it became an overwhelmed resource. When we went through the lockdown with COVID, that was one of the first resources that was reduced for cost, as was a lot of others. Concierge, we used to have a very proud society of concierge. Concierge keys, getting those keys on your lapel wasn't just a pin that was handed to you because you get the job. Those were earned credentials, just like black buttons are on a chef, on their chef's coat. It isn't now; it's just a handed out uniform color. Like you're looking like you're that person, but you really didn't qualify to be that person. Bartenders, since I'm on a grind, bartenders going behind a beer trough and popping beer caps. It doesn't make you a bartender. Bartenders were a trained skill that took years. I'm proud of the fact that I went through years to become a bartender back when bartending meant that you had achieved a level of success rather than a job orientation of I'll put you behind the bar and you do the simple drinks until the complex drinks come skill set. There's an art. Nicely, from this, just to finish the grind on the good side of it, bartending has turned more into an art in recent years as people begin to realize that there's a certain flair value to it and a certain experience that can be derived from having a good bartender that isn't just a service bartender pouring drinks by demand, but an engagement of a person with a guest. Another sidebar. Anyways, back to CRM, customer relationship management, and technology. So AI, if properly used, can augment the bandwidth requirements to actually help and facilitate a lot of conversations and content that guests may have that they can't find easily on your site or don't have the time to discover on your site. That's another criteria. You have the content on your website, but the navigation to discover it or the ability to discover it easily is a little challenging. AI bots, AI communication, interactions can be very helpful with it. There's a whole pile. We'll be talking today on the podcast, actually, about tools, AI tools that create communication capabilities of the content that is yours. You're not asking the universe the question through the AI. You're literally asking the AI to use only your data to give an answer. And there's some very cool tools that do that. And we'll talk about that on the podcast, the audio podcast. If you don't know, we do an audio podcast also every week, just as we do this live TV show. The podcast is Hospitality Marketing Podcast. We're on 39 platforms, I think, equal amount of countries. We transcribe it into 11 different languages, and you can catch it on just a pile of places. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. Anyways, so the idea that you can help with customer relationship management in an interactive way is a huge technical tool value. The other aspect of this is the value proposition of why it is important that you focus on your customer relationships now. We have entered for a while, and it's getting more interesting as it gets narrower and narrower and narrower, is the criteria of how we can understand our guests. We have discussed now for a few years, couple of years at least, almost 3, the diminishment of the usages of cookies, the ability to linger in the knowledge of what you're doing online, the privacy issues associated with that, the permissions of privacy of using your data. All of these things are becoming larger and larger influences on our ability to correctly understand what we used to take for granted as data. Let's be very candid about some things. People look at their web analytics and think that that is a full and complete picture of everybody that's involved with their hotel. First off, that's not true. Even if you just look at your sources of business, if someone walks up to your front desk as a walk-in and checks in, nothing about your web analytics is related to that actual conversion. They may have looked at your website, they may have seen some, but they didn't buy or anything like this. But the fact that it translated into an actual transaction is not connected to the analytics that you have online. If your sales person comes up and goes directly to the PMS system and logs in the booking list for a group, that's not in your web analytics. Doesn't mean the traffic and the traffic associated with people looking that are part of that group. But then again, that's activity to your website that usually gets assigned as non-converted because they didn't actually book when they went through all that process. The salesperson took the list and went to the property management system and put it in manually. Those are 2 hard answers, but that's a fractional percentage of your overall top line channel contributions, as we know. But it's viable, and groups especially can be incredibly viable. But still, even if you're a full meeting house and you're 50% or 60% of your business, most often you have booking channels, group codes that are used. And we would know the traffic that goes to those individual blocks if you do proper UTM structuring and you know that the corporate codes were used and so forth. So there's a trackability. Just talked myself in a circle of how good and how bad it was. But anyways, there is an ambiguity to them. The other is, unless you're actually doing server-side analytics, you're not actually capturing all of the traffic engagement with your website. More and more people are using browsers like DuckDuckGo. The new iOS 17 has reduced its ability to hourly for other cookies to be tracking. In some cases, as is showing up now, it's even prohibiting analytics tracking until authorization is given. They're not allowing any of that to happen until you authorize that the site can track any information from you. Firefox has been doing that for a while. Microsoft has been doing it for a while. Google is a bit of the laggard because it would be biting the hand that feeds them when it comes to advertising. But they're positioned themselves with GA4 and the future of reducing the cookies from their perspective even more so. They will still be a first-person aggregator of data. We will become very reliant on what they can tell us about what they know, but we can't see it directly ourselves. So we're entering that world that we're going to have less information to use. Add to the fact that your website only represents a certain percentage of that. I would say, just so that you understand some value relationships of that, anywhere from 60 to 70% of your traffic is understood by your browser's tracking. There is probably 20 to 30%, okay, or more, 40% maybe, that is not known by your browser for reasons of ad blockers, non-permission based usabilities, lack of cookies, so forth and so on. More third-party vendors are going to run into problems of having accuracy of their ads. That's where this counts. It's not that you can't still run ads on things. It's just how well those ads show up relevant to the people most interested in what the ad is about. The targeting now becomes a little more ambiguous. Facebook has had this struggle with them, and Facebook suffered for all of this way back 2 years ago when they, well, now 3, shouldn't be 3, when they dismissed the idea that iOS 14 was going to prohibit their ability to garner data from the Meta side, back then called Facebook. And they looked at it in a poor way of saying only 11% of the users were iPhone users. Yes, but 40% plus of their purchases were related to people that used iPhones. So that inability to actually track through on the usages of the devices hurt Facebook dramatically in their revenue streams, because all of a sudden their ads accuracy translated to us, conversion values went down. Instead of me getting 10 or 15 to 1 on what I spent with the platform, I was now only getting 5 or 4 to 1 because I wasn't hitting the same quality traffic audience that I had hit before the limitations of what was allowed to be tracked. All of this ties to the value of CRM, our CRM, what we use our customer relationship data for. What do I mean by customer relationship data? The data we have about the people that we do business with. That's a one-on-one relationship that we have. The guest was at our hotel. Now, 2 weeks ago, showed 425, right? Yes. 426. We talked about lifetime value. We talked about calculating lifetime value, the simplicity of calculating lifetime value. And lifetime value only comes from direct channel acquisition. They are dialoguing directly with you. That means you know who they are, you know how to communicate with them and connect with them. And you know their interaction with you, what they bought, when they stayed. That detailed of information is the information you have in equity with them, okay? And they've given you permission to have that information because that's what it took to create the transaction. So you have the permissions of it. You don't have infinite permissions to it. It's not yours to keep. It's not your data. But you have permissions to have that data because they did business with you. So in that lifetime value, and just as a quick recap of that show, we talked about the fact that a simple calculation of having a person come through your direct channel versus a third party that keeps that data for themselves means that you have the ability to communicate with them in pre-stay, during their stay, obviously, because they're with you, and post-stay because you have that information direct with them. When you allow it to go to a third party like an OTA or other supporting services, that data is retained by them. And until they connect to you again, you really can't engage with them. Now, several hotels have obviously gone forward and tried to, I got a little shine on me somewhere, tried to go over and convert people that come to the front desk. I'm sure many hotels, your hotel might be included, has an active campaign that then they see the source of the booking as a third party OTA, that you solicit them to sign up, get an email so that you can give them a discount or incentive. I'll move over here so I don't have sunshine on my face. I'll go this way. I'll go this way. I'll block my sign for right now. To convert them so that you have a means of communicating with them in the future. Why is all this valuable? I mean, you have business with them and so forth. Well, first off, lifetime value means that the initial transaction with you, the cost of acquisition is literally translated to that first transaction. If you made $500 off them and it cost you $50 to get them, okay, you have a 10% cost. However, in lifetime value, the next time they come, First off, it didn't cost you $50 the second time because they reached out to you the second time. So there might be some cost with it, but just to keep this a simple math, the $50 and they say they just bought the same amount. They stayed the same amount of time or did the same thing next year. That $500 gets added to the other $500. And now instead of a 10% cost, it's now a 5% cost of acquisition. Now, if you modify that to the number of times that these people might come back, you're now diminishing each and every time for whatever they purchase diminishes your initial cost of acquisition. That's not inclusive of all of the, and obviously if they come back a number of times, it's because you gave them great service quality, they enjoyed your product, and they do that, they become advocates. That's what we talked about Flip 2 back then too. As advocates, they solicit business for you. So that business that's solicited, the cost of acquisition for that is a lot less initially anyway, but it gets added to, if you want to add the math to it, the fact that they invited a friend to stay at the hotel they stayed at. It's like, hey, I love this place. If you're in this area, stay at this place. So that person does. That can be attributed to the cost of acquisition of having gotten that first guest. So lifetime value is a branched out, geometrically larger value proposition, okay, than just a simple transaction cost. Compare that to an OTA where it costs you 18% to get them. The person stayed, they enjoyed their time. You still can't communicate with them, and maybe you didn't get their information from you or not. And the next year, because they did a great thing being with you and so forth, and they bought through Expedia, and Expedia keeps incentivizing them and giving them values and so forth, they're more loyal to Expedia. They buy through Expedia again. You're paying 18% again for that get. The cost of acquisition maintains the same. There's no lifetime value benefit. Yes, you get another transaction, but you have to pay once again the third party to do that. But here's another reason why it becomes critically valuable. As more and more of these guidelines of the usages of data and the ability to acquire the data, more and more cookie reductions, like for instance, iOS 17 has reduced the ability for cookie to be durable, if even allowed, durable for only 7 days, which means if the guest comes back using iOS 17 after 7 days, you see them as a new guest. You don't see them historically from what they may have done before, so you don't coalesce the two things together. That limits your accuracy of providing content to them. The ability to make sure on show 425, we talked about the stages of communication. The first entry of communication should be different than the second engagement of communication, should be different than the third level of communication, because you're not badgering them in repeat content. You're progressively adding content as you discover more and more of their particular interests. That progression workflow of content we talked about. The same holds true for CRM. You want the engagement to be progressive. It's not an inundation of buy every time they see an ad, every time they get retargeted on a site that they go to, you're there. Every time they come to your site, they're seeing the same stuff. It didn't solicit the engagement with them the first time. And unless they've changed their mind and come back and they're willing to take advantage of the offer that you were giving them, which does happen, it's really repetitive browbeating. And it doesn't have the value proposition of, rather than going over and saying, hey, Lauren, nice to see you back. We told you about that one offer. We have a different offer just in case. That adds value. Doesn't mean you can't get the first offer, you get the second offer. That progression of communication is very powerful. So anyway, how does this all relate to why CRM is so valuable now? As more and more restrictions begin to get played out as to how we're able to track and monitor what people are doing, and we become more and more reliant upon places like Google to tell us what we need to know about our guests outside of their direct engagement with us, we will have less and less value of acquiring new guests as tools and more reasons of our repeat guests to be repeatable. We want the relationship with the guests that we have to be connected to us. We want to be able to keep the relationship. Doesn't mean every time they travel, they're going to be with us. Doesn't mean every time they travel, they're going to be traveling for the same reason. But what we want to do is create the relationship with the guests that, should we ever be in the consideration of them being in our market, for whatever reasons they find necessary to come in, for whatever reasons they decide to travel, we should be in front of mind for them. That comes from being active in the communication and content with them. Not badgering, not berating, not repetitive, but insightful as to their interests, insightful as to their reasons, insightful as to their frequency, and honoring those things so that you have a good CRM program in place that is tailored to the individual's engagement. That is a monumentous task for an individual or even team of people, because you're now thousands of people. Just think about how many arrivals you have and how many people have stayed at your hotel, how many room nights you have, how many bookings you have. Multiply that up, multiply that up, multiply that up. Even just take a percentage of that and try to monitor each and every one of those persons' particular travel interests and variations. Okay, you multiply it times one time I'm traveling for business, next time I'm traveling for family. Oh my gosh, that means I'm one of two. And that multiplies it, multiplies it. It's exponential. That was the word I was looking for earlier. Exponential growth numbers. It's very hard. Well, this is where technology is at to our benefit right now. We have the technology now to be able to do these types of things well, not just moderately, but well. Here's where we fall down. Who in your organization is responsible for CRM? I ask that question all the time. Actually, I ask two questions. The first question I ask, and no one's ever gotten it right. No one. What is your repeat guest percentage of all the business you get on an annual basis? I've tried changing the question to hopefully give them a chance to be accurate. Like they went and looked at this because it's a good number to go into the next year with. Like, what was your total repeat guest ratio from 2022? There was a guesstimate. They were wrong. What about last month? And I don't expect people to always persistently look at each month, but just out of it, sometimes there's this understanding of where my business come from. It's always a great tool to do every month to just, how did our business land? Where did it come from? What channels produced? How did they produce? Of that production, how many people came back again? I think I've said this story a couple of times, but I'll say it again. At one time with one of my clients, I asked for 3 lists, technically 4, but 3. First list was, how many people, give me a list of everybody that has stayed with you the most last year. Just give me a list. The person that stayed with you the most, all the way down. Then I asked for a second list. Who spent the most money with you last year? Top down. Third list. How many are on both lists? There's your core. Those are the people you want to give stuff to. And you might react going, wait, I already have their frequency. I already have their money. Why do I have to give them something? You got to thank them. You got to thank them that they have decided that you're the place that they want to go to. Now, if you don't already know these people by interacting with them in the lobby when you're a lobby lizard, I don't even know if that's a continued use term, but it used to be called lobby lizards. But anyways, when your manager hangs around the lobby to ensure that the interactions with the guests makes them personalized. How's that? We called it lobby lizard back in the day. You should know these people. You should know why they travel. You should know why they have come as many times as they have, or why they have spent as much money as they did. Now, the fourth list that I didn't share was the number who had the most days with you, who had the longest duration of stays with you. That reason why I put that as an ancillary fourth list is because depending upon your inventory type, if you're a Residence Inn or for long-term stay or something like this, that has a very large fluctuation with your corporate business or your group block businesses as well. It begins to blend in another source of business that has a whole different profile of discussion as to marketability and communication with them at the CRM level, because you have to go through channels. You just can't keep dialoguing with the person that's actually staying with you when they really are represented by the company that sent them there. So that's why we kind of make that one kind of an option fourth list, but it's a good list to have. It's a good list to know that of how many people who has stayed with you the many days, because you should recognize them regardless. I mean, even if it's a corporate person because somebody sent them there and they had to spend a month there or whatever, and it puts them on the list, you should thank for them for there and listen to them as to what they think you should do to improve your service. If anybody's going to give you a good opinion of what you should do, is the people that when you're not there, see how it runs. When you're not there, hear how the creaks and the groans and the moans and the fastness of a maintenance repair or the sound of an ice machine or the quality of the food persistently or the temperament of your staff. Those people see it firsthand. They have the best unbiased perspective because, as I've said before, I loved hiring people that were not in hotels because they had the purest perspective of what a guest would see. The more you work at a hotel, the more you get tainted and begin to create excuses as to why, well, I know why that was a problem because of this, and this, or I know why that person was at the front desk that time because of this, and this. You excuse yourself out of just the reality that it still was a problem that you should have had that person do whatever they were supposed to have done. So that's why I loved when I brought in people that were wide-eyed and hadn't been new to the business, because it gave me that pure view of how our business actually was looked at from a guest perspective. But anyways, going back to the who runs your CRM, who does? Now, there's a CRM for group and sales. And I'm not taking that away from them. They should run and operate their engagements with their clientele and their guests. And they should expand that relationship beyond their corporate relationship negotiations of the contract to understanding the actual reality of the people in there. They should meet and greet the group organizer when they arrive. They should interact with the group, especially repetitive groups, as to getting feedback about how we can do better. What did you like or dislike about us? What would you improve in our breakouts? What would you improve in our room configurations? What would you improve about how we as a team work? You should have that engagement, and you should reward those people that come back more and often. And you might say, yes, I already do that. We always give a goodie bag. We always, double up on points if it's a brand or something like this. That's now an expected norm. It was a norm for me when I ran hotels. What are you doing different? What makes you different so that the hotel next to you, who's pulled your list of people that are group wise in your hotel, how are you keeping them from getting poached? How are you treating them uniquely special? That it's just not the perfunctory things that acknowledge their business, but it's the personal things that make it even more so. So that when the other hotel that is probably equal to or being even offered a better incentive for them to go to, they'll look and say, yeah, but it doesn't have Lauren. And man, I love those coffee mornings, or they always put that special thing in my room, and they always, this, and this, or whatever it is. And that weighs and tips the scale back to, I'm good. I know it would probably benefit us financially for the one time, but not knowing really what they would be the second year. And I do know what I get here the second and the third year. I'm going to stick with what I know. That's where CRM relationship and sales runs. Now, keeping that intact in the sales department, who runs your CRM for your transient business? I'd be really interested. I'm actually going to ask you if you want to send me an email, Lauren at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. Send me an email that tells me who runs your CRM for your transient business. It best not be your revenue manager, because that's not anything that they're dealing with. If you say it's your marketer, which one? The third party that runs your marketing, or the person that's in your team that polices your third party and mitigates the CRM usage? That's about the best I've found from a team. I have yet to find a true core person that runs CRM that isn't multitasked with other things or defaulted to running it because they're in the space that's similar enough to CRM management that they're now tasked with it as well. I tend to see that it finds upon front desk supervisors, sometimes sales associates, sometimes administrative assistants to sales, operations assistants. It gets floated. A lot of times, if it's brand especially, it gets regulated to a brand function for revenue management to use. Like, oh yeah, we're going to send an email out for brand. It's a sales pitch that brand gets used. Like, hey, let's send out the super spring offer. And that's their idea of CRM. It's just a modality of marketing. It's not an engagement value. It's not about cultivating direct communication and direct information. Now, as a brand, you're even hobbled more because none of the guest information that you garner is yours, according to brand. It's brands. Everything that you build as loyalty for people coming to your hotel, if you took those list creations that I had and you had your list and you pandered to those people and you acknowledged them and you gave them your own ancillary gifts and so forth, and they kept them loyal to you, their data still isn't yours. That data is considered owned by the brand. And that gets put into the pile. And for some brands, it gets shared to everybody. Actually, all brands share it to everybody. But, and as anybody that's in the big M knows, you have frenemies all around you. And that data that you've been so careful to curate is actually resources to everybody around. And if you're not taking advantage of that as a resource for yourself from theirs, you should be. You should be actively pursuing, if usable and applicable to your brand level and tier and quality of product, you should be totally about making you the designated level authority for whatever brand product you have to anybody that qualifies for that usage, whether it's a short business traveler for a Courtyard or whether that's a long haul traveler for a Residence Inn compared to a Hampton or a Hilton Garden. There's a whole choice selection out there in the world. Gosh knows with brand, there's every flavor for every kind because they don't know what they are anymore. They just want to be everything to everybody. So they make multiple brands to do it, and they can sell them over on top of other brands in the same space that are going for the same audiences. Brand saturation. If you're an independent hotel or have the ability to focus on just yourself, that affinity relationship is critical so that you are not compared to other properties in consideration of similarity. Again, you're not going to get everyone every time, anytime they travel all the time. There, people travel to other locations. People travel to locations for different reasons. That multiplicity creates a persona that is fractioned and variable. And we've had these discussions. Actually, the show, which we made a book, by the way, our book is out, Marketing for in the Age of 2024, was a core based on shows number 4, 18, 19, 20, and 21. Those four shows, and we talked very much about the targeting of people and their value proposition from a persona and from an action item with new GA4. How you really are creating custom audiences with the actions that you're wanting to identify audiences from. Like, did they go to a certain page? Did they get as far to a certain point but didn't book? Whatever those actions are, and then coalescing it to the known personas, the demographics, the behavioral, the psychographics of what they are. Like, why do they travel? Who and what they are? What's the criteria of their travel? What is their income level requirements? Family components to it. That combination is the magic combination for 2024 on how best to get in front of and continue to engage with CRM, the value of what they are. That combined with somebody being focused on CRM specifically for transient travel will be a huge differentiator going forward as we get more restrictions on our ability to identify the targeting of our audiences on outside of our own channels, as we continue to have more and more qualifications as to the usability of the data that we do have, the need to cultivate the relationships for not just the single sale that they represent, but the long-term sale, a lifetime relationship with us that they are truly connected to us for. And that is completely dependent on operations fulfillment. This isn't an exclusive conversation. I've often used the fishing analogy that, four guys go out on a boat. You need a captain to the boat to get you there. You need somebody to make sure there was fuel in the boat. You need to make sure that somebody knows where the fish are, and you need the fishermen. Obviously, knowing where the fish are is your marketing. The captain of the boat is operations. The people who make sure the gas is in the boat is accounting. And the people that know where the do the fishing are the salespeople, the marketers. So that collaboration is unifying. It's not segmented. Operations has to fulfill what marketing sells and communication. Sales has to fulfill with operations and the fulfillment of what the relationship with the contract is. Accounting has to make sure that all the billing is correct and proper so that nobody gets damaged by the fact that something was said or told or obligated but not identified in a bill, and the bill goes out incorrect, because that taints the damage of all the good that the operations did in fulfillment with the augmentation of having to argue or dispute a bill. Just picture yourself in a restaurant. Service was great up until you needed the bill, or that the bill was wrong and now you can't find the server to correct for it, and or the server only paid attention to you when they dropped the bill. All of those things influence whether or not you tip and whether you thought a good impression of the place you stayed at. Same happens to the hotel. You have anticipation of expectations. You have reality of those things compared to the expectations. Did the program that I bought get fulfilled? Did everything they say about the hotel, was it true? Was the service amicable to what I wanted and expected for what I paid? And then post afterwards, was communication relevant? Did I find it valuable? And would I come back again should I choose? NAPER score. Anyway, so I think we've kind of focused in on the value proposition of CRM, the usability of CRM, and the need to have somebody responsible for CRM, the changing influences of technology related to how to handle CRM, and more importantly, the future and continued value of the CRM relationship as being paramount compared to the new acquisition, in the sense that the more you can cultivate and the more exponential the growth of that lifetime value, the more you can increase the frequency of their spend, the more you can create more advocacy of their efforts to bring in more people to stay with you because of their positive experience with you. The longer you can keep that relationship going are all positive modifiers in the lifetime value represented by direct communication, direct channel conversion. That's CRM. Having a good engagement, having a progressive conversation pre, during, and post, and having a perpetual engagement so that you're not aversive to being in front of them, but you're mindfully aware of keeping connected to them so that they keep you into consideration always, is a balancing act that takes focus, takes a person, takes a resource. AI can help and augment it. AI can help being supportive of it. It is not a replacement for a human. Remember the 3 rules we discussed. So with that, if you're watching us on TV, Roku, Google, Amazon, Apple, Samsung, LG, thank you so much for that on the hospitality channel, which if you don't already have it, it's a channel on your TV. You can go get it. The live show is always on the free side. There's a pay gate with more content afterwards. If you're watching us on our recap, our simulcast, Facebook, we have several pages that we're broadcasting there. YouTube channels, several channels we're broadcasting there. LinkedIn, one, which is my profile channel. If you're watching us there, thank you. X, now which formerly was Twitter, we're there. We're even on Twitch. If you use your gaming console for media, we're there as well. We're on Discord. We don't broadcast live. Obviously, there's no broadcast, but we do have content that we put up on Discord for people that are related to the marketing. We do have a podcast after this, which will have a small recap of our conversation today. In addition, we will talk about specific tools associated with AI and its usages, mainly for specific defined content and data that is support driven, not human replacement. Remember the 3 rules we discussed. And if you want to, you can always watch us in reruns. The I Love Lucy channel that we have for all of our live shows and also all of our podcasts is hospitalitychannel.tv. You can search by data broadcast, guest hosts, and or topic. And you find we're 10 years in doing this every week, or we're in our 10th year doing this every week, no matter where we are in the world. As to is our podcast. Actually, our podcast is 17 years old, but within the past 10 years, it's been a weekly show. Before that, it was intermittent. It was sometimes every 2 weeks, every once a month. We've now got it to where we just do it every week. At the same time, we do the live show afterwards. And of course, if you are a hospitality marketing person, this is your job and you're already working in the space, we're not here to teach the basics of hospitality marketing. We're here to take somebody that already is doing hospitality marketing and wants a peer group to ask those questions. They don't have anybody to ask around them. How often where you're thinking through a process, but you're in a bubble because there's nobody in your organization or nobody in your third party or whatever that you can collaborate with without it either being a price tag for paying them the time to do it, or somebody that may not be as knowledgeable about it and not understand. You have to preface the whole dialogue. We have a community for that. We have hospitalitymarketing.club. If you go to hospitalitymarketing.club, put your email in. I send you a quiz, 10 questions. If you get at least 90% correct, 9 out of 10, I send you an invite. It's a closed group. It's not on Facebook or anything like that. It's a closed group on our own platform that allows you to collaborate. We have live Q&A sessions every week. We have live shared content teachings. Right now, we've been really focused on GA4 and analytics and usage of BigQuery and Python coding and a bunch of other stuff. So it's been very fun to have people collaborate. It's a good chance to find people that you don't have to preface your conversations by asking a question. So there you have it. Those are all of our resources that are available. You can, of course, always reach me by sending me an email. I answer to every email for the live show and the podcast, lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. We also have an audio talkback series that you can do. Just go to hdm.news/talkback. And there's always a weekly question that you can answer audibly, or you can speak your mind. And if it's a topic that you want me to share, you can give me permissions as to how much I refer to you, whether I just talk about the topic, which sometimes these topics of the shows come from that, or whether I can refer to you by name or actually quote you and put you on the podcast. Sometimes do that, where let you ask your own question kind of thing. And for the podcast, just so you know, we also, we've started and are running and we're continually expanding a hospitality radio station. It's in 26 channels. Amazing, the world of international broadcasting. There's 26 channels that we're on, just like the TV station. The TV station's in 209 countries. So too is all the radio stations in 209 countries. The radio station is not just my content. I have asked permissions, and I have some pending permissions of others, of bringing in other shows. We have a show about revenue management. We have a show about metasearch. We have a show about sales. We have mine about marketing. So like any radio station, at certain hours of the day regularly, the shows will be about that content. So you can look that up at hospitalityradio.com. That is our home base website. But if you do listen to international or radio stations online, digital radio stations online, we're soon to get on iHeartRadio, which is a big deal because it's not like you just say, here, put my stuff up. You have to go through a massive qualification to be considered to be on iHeartRadio. And we're in the final stages of that, which means we'll be an actual radio station available on iHeart, which I think will make a very big difference as to people getting exposure to our content. So with that is everything that I can refer to about what we're doing. And hopefully you're connecting with us. And if you have any questions about any of this, you can always reach out to me. My name is Lauren Gray. I thank you for the privilege of your time. And I do look forward to talking to you all next week.